One of the most common questions we get around Social Security these days is Social Security going bankrupt and how is that going to impact my benefit from a financial planning perspective? So, in today's video, we're going to break down what it actually means when you hear that Social Security is going bankrupt, as well as a couple financial planning things to consider when the question of how is my benefit going to be impacted in retirement comes into play. So, welcome to Cuppable. My name is Michael Dunham. With me today is Patrick Fontana, the founder of Fontana Financial Planning.
Welcome. Cheers,
Welcome,
Michael.
Patrick. All right. So, Patrick, to get started, let me go ahead and ask you the question. So, when people say, is Social Security going bankrupt? Can you break down a little bit about what that means?
Sure. So the Social Security Trust Fund as a standalone account has a negative trajectory and is, being drained down. So that's what is getting the press. The bigger issue, in the short term is how much of the money that gets paid out in Social Security actually comes from income. Well, as most of us know, we're paying out of every paycheck to the Social Security system, as well as our employers or self-employed are paying both sides of that. And it's pretty significant inflow and covers a huge portion of what's covered. So there'll definitely be changes. We can't foresee what those changes are, kind of how they play out. But before we have more significant problems for us to worry about, part of it's age banded. So I'll say the older generation, I'm putting myself in that 20-year older than Michael category, have less concern of changes in our benefits. The younger folks will likely have some changes as far as what levers can they pull. We could prognosticate a little bit on that. One is how much of your income do you pay Social Security on, and we've seen that number go up and up and up each year, but it's still got a cap on it, which could be raised. What other levers can be pulled, Michael, to make the Social Security system last longer and be more successful?
Yeah. So, a couple things I'll hit on. So you mentioned the amount of payroll tax that we pay into Social Security, which right now it's 6.2%. And if you work for an employer, one thing to know is your employer is also responsible for the other side of that. So they're paying 6.2% as well. And there's a wage base, which is roughly $180,000 this year, and it gets adjusted every year. And that's actually one thing in preparation for the potential of the quote unquote bankruptcy that's going to occur. One thing that they've done in preparation of that is over the last couple of years, that limit has increased quite substantially and will likely continue to increase in the future. So if you're a high earner, you may have noticed at some point in the year you get a big pay bump in your paycheck, and that's because you hit that wage base, and now you're not having to pay that 6.2%. If you're a business owner, that's also why there's some strategy around how much you pay yourself. If you pay yourself too much, you may be paying both sides of that 6.2% when it may not be necessary based on your line of work. So there's some strategy there for business owners as well. One thing I wanted to hit on that may provide a little context around the term bankruptcy. So the Social Security Trust pays a portion of the benefits for Social Security recipients. That trust is what is set to be depleted by the year 2032 is the current estimate of when the money will run out of the trust. The trust currently only pays about 19% of those benefits. So the vast majority of the money that's coming in is actually coming from everybody who is working right now. Their Social Security withholding essentially just goes right back out the door to current recipients. And that is what covers the vast majority of the Social Security benefits that are being paid out. So even when the trust does go bankrupt, that doesn't mean Social Security benefits goes to zero. That means that they need to find a way to come up with the 19% that's now missing because that reserve is not there. So they can change the age that we're allowed to claim Social Security. They can change the calculation that's used to determine your Social Security benefits. So right now, what they do is they look at the 35 highest years earnings, and they apply a kind of complicated formula where at certain income thresholds, less of your income counts towards the overall benefit. And when you hit the wage base, you don't get any benefit from there. So there's changes that they can make to the calculation as well. Patrick, let me
I
go ahead and pass it over to you
I
too.
would say there's also lots of little pieces of fat in the rules that could certainly be changed and improved. There's some times where the Social Security system, in my opinion, is paying out. But we talked about changing the age limitations, where when do you turn it on? We do a lot of these meetings where we're looking at do you start early at 62 or wait till 70? And it's been that way for quite some time, right? So if those ages get moved back for when full Social Security is eligible and when you have to take it out, and um, those decisions will definitely affect how much the how quickly we take that path towards draining the trust.
Hmm. The last thing I'll add, if you're an individual that's close to the point that you're thinking about Social Security, you'll be claiming Social Security in the not too distant future. The one thing I always like to point out is think about who's making the rules is politicians. And regardless of political affiliation, there's one thing that we know about politicians: they like to get reelected. In order to get reelected, they need to get votes. It would be very unpopular to take a very large segment of the population and take money out of their pocket, which cutting Social Security or eliminating Social Security would do. And so I would rest easy in knowing that the likely scenario is there's going to be some maneuvering behind the scenes, some financial engineering to come up with the way that they get to be able to continue making payments to those that are expecting
Right.
them in the near future. And I'd almost call it like a hidden tax for those younger generations who have Social Security far off in the distance and are less likely to notice the impact that it's going to have on them in the long term.
So for us in the short term, we'd say the retirees that are already close to Social Security or taking Social Security, there's less of a worry in any changes for you. But for everyone, we want to have as part of your financial plan a Social Security planner. And so we've done a lot of these where we take the husband and wife Social Security records, we plug them into a system, go over what is the way to maximize your lifetime money that comes from the Social Security system. And so if you haven't done that, um, I'll say all of our clients should have. There's a few exceptions that maybe don't have a Social Security as an option, but you should do that and give us a shout. Reach out to us, and we can help with you making your financial plan.
That all said, down below in the show notes, if you're not a client of ours, but you found this conversation intriguing, you like to get some feedback on your situation, there is a link where you can schedule an introductory call. That said, Patrick, how do you want to wrap us up today?
I'll say rebalance until rich.
Cheers.
Cheers.